Okay, good morning. So I'm joined today by Charlotte and Lucy from Tupton Hall. Thank you for joining me this morning, and we're going to talk about enrolment day specifically for sixth form, which you guys handle in your school. So so the first question, let's go, Charlotte, I'll speak with you first, shall I? What are your biggest challenges for you on enrolment day that you've seen generally in your sixth form?
I think one of the greatest challenges on enrolment day is for Lucy and I to get a real awareness of how many students are accepting their places, what grades they've got, and what subjects they're choosing. So it's really hard that there are just essentially probably very few members on site, and very few members of students, very few members of staff dealing with that recruitment process.
Mm-hmm.
And we have potentially 200 students trying to communicate with us at exactly the same time about what they want to do. So it's a very pressurized and very work intensive time for both of us.
Yes.
It's very hard to manage that effectively and deal with the students and not lose all of the good reputation that we've built up with them, in terms of being this sixth form that is really supportive. We don't want to lose that and ruin it on the one day that matters most.
No.
So it's very challenging.
Right. Are most of your students coming, what's your sort of internal external split?
It can vary significantly, but at the moment we're 50-50 split in terms of applicants, not in terms of enrolment on the actual day, but certainly in applicants this year. We are almost bang on a 50-50 split between external and internal, which makes it harder to obviously communicate with those ones that are, for some of them quite considerably far away from us when they're getting that information from their own 11 to 16 schools. Yes.
And Lucy, what about you? What do you feel are the biggest challenges that you've seen?
I do think Charlotte's covered vastly there what the issues are. It is very much about making sure that we speak to both our internal and external applicants equally. Obviously, on results day itself, our internal applicants are obviously on site collecting their results, and they tend to be the first group of students that we see. But equally, we want to make sure that we are available and accessible at all times to the external applicants as well. So it's just about making sure that, like Charlotte said, our quality of service to all of the applicants remains high, and that nobody's missed. And basically the bottom line is that they are happy and that they're enrolled with us if they want to be onto subjects that they'd like to study. So we just like to make sure that we treat each student individually, which obviously takes time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's the sort of personal service, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So how did you both find your process looking back? I know you've had Admissions Plus for a while, but prior to having the platform, could you just describe your process?
Yeah, so prior to using the system, it used to be through email, and it was because we ran a paper application system, which was students did the very old school 3 pages of piece of paper that just got filed for some reason in some sort of box file. And so prior to the platform, we would just have to it sounds incredible, but confirm places individually with students via an email, which would go on for days and days and days, and was so time consuming, and it was impossible to keep track of, because you were getting, in the first moment that some schools opened results, which could have been as early as 8 o'clock, where some schools could have been 10. It was just the constant emails, and sometimes you got duplicate emails, sometimes you got the same email saying different things from the students, and then one from the parent, then one from the student. So it was a mess, and the work that it took the team to sort out. And I go back to the point that we're a massive sixth form, but we're a very, very small team of people, and we don't get any additional help other than Lucy and I to run this system. There are sixth forms with much smaller cohorts than us that can have a whole range of people working on this, which I suppose has its drawbacks as well. But
yes,
when everything's coming through us, it can make our time when everyone else is at, all the other staff are at home chilling out and maybe potentially even on holiday. We're not, and we never have been, and that's so we were
that's
looking.
quite intense, isn't it?
It is very much so, and too prone for human error as well.
Yeah,
I would agree completely with that. The other thing that we used to do on the old system is we would need, particularly the external applicants, to bring in a copy of their exam results physically to school, either on results day or on their first day in September. We'd then have to photocopy it, get the original back to them. It was just very paper heavy. And that's the biggest difference for us. We don't do any of that now, because obviously there's the opportunity for applicants to upload their exam results or a photograph of that directly onto their application form. It's cut out, like Charlotte was saying there, the human error aspect and the labor intensive, even just the physical act of having to take a piece of paper, go up to the photocopying room, come back, find that student again. It doesn't sound much, but for 200 students effectively, it soon adds up. So that's what I would contribute to that.
That's a huge job. Yeah. So what did you do if the students were bringing in their certificates in September previously? I guess they would let you know the grades that they achieved, and then you'd make them course offers based on what they'd said, and then they'd evidence it later on. And what would you do if a student hadn't quite got the grades they thought they had, or there was some sort of discrepancy?
That has happened every year.
Right.
We've always, and we're a type of sixth form that is very flexible, much to the disappointment and frustration of our curriculum leaders at times. But there have been occasions, where that student has perhaps not got the right information, or we've presumed they've got the grades and the information they've told us and they haven't.
Yes.
And one of the biggest issues is that students also forget eventually to collect their results from us, and so we have them, and then 3 years later they say we want proof of our GCSEs, and we handed them to you, and we're like, not sure you did. So, but it has happened that students have enrolled with probably not what we expected them to do, but we just have to do, and that's always going to, even with a platform, to be honest, that's going to happen.
Yes, I'm sure every school in the country has incidences where that can obviously happen. Okay, so obviously then you guys looked at Admissions Plus, and you've had that for a couple of years. So in the platform we have specific sort of functionality for the enrolment day itself, which has details to be checked for each student, and then we get them ready to enroll, and when they're in that sort of bucket, and then once they're actually enrolled, and that they're going to join you in September. So could you outline how you use those areas on the day itself?
Oh, sorry, that's my phone. That's going to ring for a while, so I'm going to mute myself and let Lucy answer that question.
Okay, no problem.
I was going to say about turning the phones off. Yes, so on the day, we obviously get some students that get in touch with us to let us know that basically thanks, but no thanks, they're going to go somewhere else. So at that point, we move them to another section on the application form, and we move everybody else into details to be checked. We do have a team of form tutors with us as well, not necessarily on results day, but certainly on the first days in September, where we can get them to be going through the details to be checked with the students, and then obviously once they've completed details to be checked, they move automatically into the enrolment section. It just allows us to know exactly at any time which stage of the application process those students are at. So if there's somebody that's still making a decision, obviously we might move them into details to be checked, but they won't move into the enrolled aspect of the system straight away. And then obviously we can just keep track, and it allows us to communicate one-to-one with the students as well, just to check what their decisions are. Quite understandably, lots of students apply from multiple places. And obviously they've got those big decisions to make. So having those specific functionalities on the system just allows us to break down those students into groups, and we can say, right, these 10 are going to stay in details to be checked because they're still making their decisions about what they'd like to do. However, we can move these 30 onto enrolled because they're here in person and they've joined us. So
Right.
it's great for us for sort of a divide and conquer approach with the applicants.
Okay, and do you split them then by like internal and external applicants? So you have sort of two different groups?
Yes, yeah, purely so that we know which students we need to be adding to our management system once they actually do join us, and obviously we need to get them onto the registers. We always say by Christmas we can't tell which students have joined us from Tupton Hall and which ones have come from other schools, but yes, in those early days we keep them in two groups just so that we can ensure that we're getting the data and the transfer files from their previous 11 to 16 providers as well, so that nobody's missed and that all of their data is pulled through.
Yes. Okay, so once they're enrolled, was there anything else that you need to do once they go through that process on enrolment day in August? Is there anything that finalises that process for you? Do you send them emails via the system and use the communications area after that?
I don't, not really, not after that, because once we've got our sort of final numbers in those in the right places, then our systems sort of kick in place from that point onwards. Obviously, we try and keep it up to date, because obviously I certainly like to look back historically over things, so I can look at trends particularly when I'm comparing internal and external numbers. So it's a great resource for me, particularly when I have to report to a senior leadership governors or to trust on what were last year's numbers and internal and things. Like, we keep everything, but once they're enrolled, we do move everything really particularly for Lucy's sake and all of her sort of systems with registers and as she mentioned, our school management system, we move everything on there, and it just sort of it stops working. We stop using it at a very key point, because then we need everything to be on our MIS. So and that just stays as a legacy for us to look back on, and it is a great sort of resource to be able to choose academic years and go back, because it allows us to do lots of things that perhaps previously we would never even have been able to start in terms of analysis and things. So it's an unforeseen benefit in that area.
Yes, the reporting. I remember being in a school and the reporting is, needed, isn't it? It's critical to know that the data is obviously right, and that you can do, as you say, the trends over different year groups, and especially if you're part of a trust. So I can see how that's really helpful. Okay, so so you're transferring your information then over to SIMS. Are you using the new app for that? Have you used the new app? Yeah,
we have. Yeah, we gave that a go a couple of months ago, which has been really useful. Actually, that's another massive plus for me in particular. In previous years, before the app was developed, I went through student by student and put them onto SIMS manually. Obviously, I only have to do that for the external students, but as our external numbers are growing year on year, that becomes obviously weeks rather than days to get that done. So with a few buttons, the app has absolutely revolutionized getting the data onto SIMS. So yes, we love the app.
Good. Yes, I mean, I think manually entering it, I always used to think if you had paper forms in the sort of old pre-digital days, and you couldn't read maybe what the parents had put, you couldn't, even if you get a telephone number a couple of digits incorrect, and then you can't contact the family.
And that did happen. Some students have got like you say, legibility issues with their handwriting, and it's something that they would get support for when they join us, obviously, as part of our offer of sort of additional needs. But that doesn't help them in filling out a paper application form. So that again, human error kind of side of things was a much bigger factor there than when they've got to type things onto an application form. It's not completely solved. Some of them have got autofill on their laptops when they fill their application form in, and it puts their surname as their first name or something like that. But obviously, you spot those things as you're going through. But yes, definitely the legibility issue is completely resolved.
Okay, so yeah, that's great. You've covered lots on enrolment day, which is really interesting. And I guess maybe could you just explain a little bit about how you use the platform for more generally for your application phase for new students who are applying to the school for the first time?
So it is what we tend to use it for, and Lucy uses it most for this, so she'll know more. But it is great for communication. First of all, from my point of view, to see how many people are applying. I remember the first time that we used it, and we did an open evening and launched the site that evening with the students. And so I think I was a bit obsessive on that first night going on just to see how many people had sort of started their application, and that's quite a dangerous thing, because you've become kind of quite obsessed with going, I love another check, see how many more people. And certainly for when we've got in school, we've got a marketing lead, a lady that was responsible for that, and she took great pride in the fact that the open day that she considers to be one of her flagship things, and we could say, within 10 hours 50 people had gone onto the website and started an application. So from that point of view, there's nothing that can quite rival that in knowing the impact of something that you've done. But then it's the communications, sharing things en masse with them, because of course when you've got an external cohort, getting groups of emails onto your Office 365 is actually really hard, but it isn't on ULAT, on the application system platform. So to be able to send bus timetables out, taste days, which Lucy is doing on Monday, sending little marketing messages like, we hope you're doing okay with your GCSEs, or you're not GCSEs in this case. So that constant drip feeding, and also the availability to put parents in it as well as students. It's for me, other than like a recruitment tool, it's a marketing tool essentially. It's what we use as our outward face to the community, and to new applicants and to other schools. So we just try and use that feature, particularly the messages. I think next year Lucy and I will look at our the first page of it to make to update that, because we probably haven't done that in a while. But and to personalize it. You go into other schools now, sixth forms, and you obviously look at their application system, and you sort of give yourself a little of a sneaky giggle if they're doing something like a paper form, or here's a link to our document, and you just think, you must be very, very sad that you're still working on that format.
So much work, for staff to do it that way.
And it doesn't look good. It doesn't, and I've seen other schools that have, if you're part of our school, do this link, but if you're not part of our school, you have to do a different one, and that's awful. It doesn't really convey the right message at all, I don't think. So for us, Lucy uses it as a day-to-day tool, but I really see it as a marketing aspect to enhance the image of the sixth form, particularly. That's how I use it.
I think you're entirely right, and it's so important, the image, especially when you've got students joining for the first time. They're not, they haven't experienced Tupton Hall yet. They're just coming in. The parents are just looking at it, so it's all new. It's so important. So Lucy,
it sets the right tone. It presents us as a professional organisation, and Charlotte touched on already, the personalisation of the application form is brilliant, because it means that we can tailor the questions to whether they are internal or external applicants. So we don't need a separate form. It just knows as to whether they say that they're a Tupton Hall student or not, whether to ask them a set series of questions. The email communication tool is fantastic in terms of being able to communicate with them in the moment. I think that is one of the biggest benefits, because prior to this system, we would have been sending out letters. And of course, you've then got to rely on the post. And then they've got to post something back to you. And again, it is weeks of not even back and forth, but you send something out, you wait for it to come back, and anything could happen in between, whereas an email is straight there and straight back again. Usually within a turnaround of 1 or 2 days. And students nowadays have their emails on their phone, so they pick them up in a way that perhaps our generation didn't, would have done less. It's part of their daily routine now to check their emails. They're very digitally aware, and so we just feel that the system reflects the way that the students work best and can best access our school.
No, definitely, like especially for sixth form, those students were sort of born and used social media throughout their lives. It's always been around them. They're very, as you say, very digitally aware. As a parent, my heart sinks if I have to print a form, get a pen, fill it out with a pen, then find an envelope. I never have one. Go and get some stamps. I never have any. It just delays, and everyone's busy. Like most parents are working, most mothers are working. So people just don't have time, do they?
No, and it is a massive asset. I mean, you're right. I do have it on my desk here, an envelope for my son's school that's been in my bag for about 4 weeks. And it's really important. I'm like, one day, I will get it to them. But you do look at the schools that haven't got a system like that, and you do just think, how on earth are you functioning? We introduced it to our trust, which was probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and it just, they saw it for the first time and took it on, almost universally because of its appeal. I haven't looked if there are rivals or competitors, but certainly haven't seen any others about at all that's offering anything like that. So you managed to grab a corner of the market there that's was muchly needed.
I think we're very focused on the admissions piece and being sort of experts in that area, and then obviously the ability to get the information into SIMS and some of the other MISs that we work with, and then obviously then they take over the day-to-day school management, so it's a sort of seamless transition from one platform to the other. So and I guess the last thing is, have you had any feedback from yourselves, from parents and students who have enjoyed or found the platform easier to use? Did you receive much feedback from them?
I don't think, to be honest, it was not something we've asked them, and they wouldn't have anything to compare it to be honest. So the only people that would only know the likes of before and after are me and Lucy, essentially. I certainly remember, and I remember it I was doing a paper application years ago, and it was a candidate that we really liked, and he was from another school, and we really made a fuss of him when he came because we really wanted him to join us. And then about 4 or 5 months later, we hadn't heard from him, so I got in contact with his dad, and I was sat in this office here, but then we didn't hear from you, and we felt that was you weren't actually genuinely that bothered, and therefore we've gone somewhere else. And I remember that it must probably be about 10 years ago, that conversation, but it still stuck with me, because I felt that I'd not done something right and I'd lost out on, and they were thinking bad of the school and me, when really they probably didn't realise I had a full-time teaching job. And the idea of recruiting sixth formers was lovely, but it wasn't just who I was. So I certainly find now that I feel, Lucy and I sit down, around half term, say, shall we send them a happy Easter message? Shall we send them a good luck message with their exams? Shall we just check in with them? And I'm very, very aware that that's absolutely vital to keep the smiley faces and can we help with anything. And during lockdown, Lucy used it loads to keep in contact with the sending out newsletters, even results like videos that they could look at and watch. So while we don't have any feedback, I think each of us know that it was a game changer, and it's made our lives easier. So therefore, if anything could make our lives easier,
yeah,
you know, and especially during COVID, you know, and our recruitment, you know, from that academic year and to this academic year illustrates that what we did worked. And other schools that haven't had it, don't have it or didn't have it, I think have suffered. So therefore, it's a vital part of our approach, I think. So
I completely agree. We wouldn't be without it. I honestly can't believe that we used to run it the way that we did. It's hard to think about that really, because we didn't know any differently. But obviously now that we are in with the system and have been, as you say, for a few years, I can't believe it ever ran another way, because this routine is so efficient now, and the communication with the students and parents is so much slicker, that I would recommend it to everybody.
Yeah. And we always say, whatever, you know, we've tried to encourage our year 7 transition leader to look at it, although our recruitment to year 7 is crazy big, but it would be nice to have it all joined up, to be honest. But yeah, whatever school, whatever school I speak to, or particularly sixth form, which I speak to other sixth forms quite a lot, you know, I always just say, if you haven't switched, why not? Because you know, lots of people say money, and I think, well, that's not really a good enough reason, because it makes up, it more than compensates for that in every aspect. You know, our recruitment massively increased, so I think, you know, if you can recruit one more student, we've covered the cost.
You've covered the cost. I did some calculations based on a sort of traditional paper-based system, and then using Admissions Plus, and it's at least 3 times faster, I think, in terms of process. Because you can work out the bits that you can eliminate, you know, which forms you no longer need to print, post, you know, wait for, and so on and so on, and so the time reduces significantly. So, well, thank you so much, Lucy and Charlotte. It's been really nice speaking with you, and I really appreciate you giving up your time. It's always so busy at schools. So thank you so much for talking to me this morning.
No, absolutely, our pleasure.
Take care, have a lovely day, and enjoy the sunshine.
And you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.